Which celebrity's death hit you the hardest and why?
Steve Irwin. For his incredible and contagious love for animals, conservation and environmental work. 14 years later, and I still feel like crying watching videos of him.
Robin Williams and Alan Rickman. It was shocking to me honestly. He was such a big part of my childhood, that it was shocking to think I would no longer be seeing him in movies, making young kids smile.
Alan Rickman, I think. The news of it was shocking. But what made it hit a little harder, was going to the Harry Potter studios the day after, and discovering that the staff had placed a single rose at the feet of his costume. Just one sad, lone flower made it a whole lot more bittersweet. Also, not surprisingly, all of the Severus Snape wands had sold out that day.
Carrie Fisher. I loved Star Wars as a kid.
David Bowie. Brilliant musician, master of reinvention, gracious and elegant. He and Iman represented something beautiful, a private life even with celebrity. The farewell of his last album was very much like Chadwick Boseman's death, eloquent, a last goodbye so his art wouldn't be overshadowed by a lengthy farewell.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. It just felt like such a loss to the profession, and I absolutely loved his acting.
Heath Ledger. What a good few movies to go out on though. Batman and Imaginarium of Parnassus.
Naya Rivera's death this year has me feeling very sad even now. We started rewatching Glee after her passing, and sometimes the feels are just too much. The whole mystery of how she died and the fact her son will not have his mama to grow up with was just heartbreaking. R.I.P. Naya.
Kobe Bryant, and it did not help he died such a tragic death along with his daughter, who had so much ahead of her. He died just as his life dedicated to his family was about to start. I watched the NBA growing up, and though I don't play the game, I am inspired by his work ethic and mentality. I follow him on Goodreads and he made a goal to read 12 books this year. It still breaks my heart when I see he has read one of 12, he accomplished to do, and I'm never going to see a new update.
Prince. Spent years saying Prince is not dead. But the way 2020 has gone, Prince definitely would have had something to say about it all. Makes me miss him more. And MCA.
Still pretty torn up about Avicii. He's one of the few DJs I really like that I didn't get the chance to see. All of his music is so happy, it's clear that he just wanted others to be happy and spread joy. He just couldn't have it for himself. Then to find out how he committed suicide, the whole thing is so horrible.
Amy Winehouse. I was going through my own struggles with drug and alcohol abuse and a toxic relationship, at the same time she was and took solace in her music. When she didn't make it, it made me doubt that I could, but I'm glad to say I did.
Michael Jackson. Wasn't even that big of a fan, but it just felt wrong.
Gord Downie from the Tragically Hip. He was such a Canadian icon, did a ton for truth and reconciliation, and the Hips music was the soundtrack to so many Canadian lives. He was just such a good human. One of the local radio stations played 24-hour Hip after he died for about a week, and I couldn't drive to work without crying. Certain songs still get me.
I don't know if it hit me the hardest, but the one I remember vividly was Princess Diana. I was 11 when she died, and didn't know much about her, but I could tell the impact she had worldwide, and how beloved she was to people who never met her. Learning of her death breaking on the news is something that will stick with me.
Whitney Houston. Her voice was the single greatest vocal treasure of my lifetime. Still is.
Ayrton Senna. He was a Formula One driver who died after a crash during a race, and was considered by many to be one of the best F1 drivers of all time. He was my dad's favorite driver, and I was watching the race with my dad and siblings. Seeing the crash live, following the story as he went to the hospital, and hearing he died just really messed me up.
As a teenager, Kurt Cobain hit hard. As an adult, the death of Lil Chris really hit me as he was so young. Both struggled with fame and how fickle it was.
Princess Diana, when she died it gave me the strength to leave an extremely abusive marriage. Her untimely death and being so young struck a chord, and I realized at that point that life is too short.
I don't think I ever quite got over Bowie dying. Can't quite explain why, but I just always thought he was fantastic and many of his songs mean a lot to me.
Glenn Fry of the Eagles. I just remember reading the news at my desk at work, and crying silently. He was still pretty young and I hadn't known he was ill.
Paul Walker. Me and my brothers bonded so much over the early FFs, and waking up seeing that he had died crushed me.
Caroline Flack really shook me. Her death made me realize the sinister side of social media and the British media. Of course I knew how bad things were, but to watch something like that play out in real time was harrowing. It made me take a long hard look at myself, and the way I speak about people. I just remember thinking, holy f***, she was bullied to death. This actually happened.
Imagine being an already depressed 14-year-old girl, deep in her classic rock phase, and hearing that David Bowie died. Apart from Queen, he was my favorite. I was absolutely sobbing the whole week.
Pro wrestler Eddie Guerrero hit me hard. He was one of my favorites. He died on a Sunday and his last match aired on the previous Friday. He seemed so full of life, and then bam, dies in his hotel 2 days later at only 38.
When Alan Rickman died, I did some ugly crying, and still not over it.
Chester Bennington. Seeing my childhood hero lose to his demons was really upsetting. Rest in peace, Chester.
Stan Lee. His works inspired me to draw comics and make my own superheroes in my head. He inspired my love for superheroes in general.
Nate Dogg. R.I.P. Walked around the mall in a small Norwegian town the day he died, and every shop played Nate Dogg. It was fucking beautiful.
Since he hasn't been mentioned yet, Pat Tillman's death was such a tragic waste. Pat Tillman was an NFL player who volunteered for the Army Rangers, and got killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan. The circumstances surrounding the death and cover-up are such a tragedy, and the death was an enormous loss to this country.
George Michael. Every time I hear the song Last Christmas, I think of that he had his last Christmas, and this year won't be able to give his heart to someone special.
A lot of people my age will say Robin Williams. And don't get me wrong, it was shocking and tragic and I was a big fan of his. But honestly the bigger passing for me was Chadwick Boseman. For one, I thought he was about 15 years younger than he actually was. But he was seriously my favorite actor as of late.
Chester from Linkin Park. It still hurts so much to listen to their songs, with knowing what he was going through.
Stan Lee. On my birthday, after a week of being evacuated from the wildfires, I turned to him and his work when I struggled with confidence and self-esteem as a kid, and finding out he died then really made the whole evacuation fiasco worse.
Kobe Bryant fucked me up. He was a living legend. Growing up saying Kobe with every shot, having to have Mamba mentality to get things done, he was a great competitor and always had something today for us to learn from. Him, his daughter and family friends died way too soon in a terrible way. I will never forget how shocked I was when I learned the news.
Aaliyah. She was everything during my childhood, and to lose her while she was still young and branching out in her career. One of the first tragedies that spiraled out of control since then.
I know this is very recent, but Chadwick Boseman. I'm black, in my community he was a superhero. Literally, as he played Black Panther, but even more so he played many prolific black people in history. He really was an actor who wanted to uplift the black community, and in times like we find ourselves today, I believe that is important.
Thanks for watching. If you have anyone you want to share, please write them in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on more videos like this.